Thank you. Greetings, everyone. This is the IBC Technical Advisory Group for June 1st, 2022. I'm Todd Barther with the Washington State Building Code Council, and I will chair this meeting. So I think we'll start with roll call of TAG members, please.
Todd?
Yes, here.
Roger Heringa?
I'm here.
Charles Calvano? Sue Kaufman?
Here.
Mark Sniffen, Mark is alternate. Sean? Sean? No, okay. Corey Thomas? Corey, are you here? Tom?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, sir. Chris Seaman? Chris? No. Al Spalding?
Here.
Michael Bart?
I'm here.
Will Rodriguez? Andrea Smith?
Here, and just want to let you know that I am stepping out for about 30 minutes and I'll be right back.
Dave, I'm sorry, Dave, about the last name. I'll get it right the next time, I guess. Dave Germer? Dave? No? Bill? Bill?
Maybush?
Maybush, yes. Maybush.
Present.
Okay, I was thinking about it. Adam Phillips?
Here.
Okay, let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 technical advisory group members. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Stoyan. And then maybe a quick opportunity here for the new TAG members. So Adam, would you like to please introduce yourself and which position you're serving? Thank you.
Yeah, Adam Phillips. I'm an assistant professor here at Washington State University. I guess my background's in earthquake engineering and steel design. Lately been doing more in the realm of hybrid buildings with mass timber and steel systems. Also some research in kind of the bridge, kind of earthquake resiliency world. And then some experimental testing experience as well.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Welcome. And Adam's filling the test labs position on the TAG. So, and who else am I missing that's potentially new?
I think Bill, but he introduced himself the last time, I believe.
Okay.
I remember that because I was having a hard time with his last name.
Okay. And Adam will slowly introduce you to the rest of the existing TAG rather than going through everyone right now. But thank you for joining, and thank you, Bill.
We have one new member, Dave, but he's representing manufacturers, suppliers, but he's not here today.
Okay, correct. Thank you. Yes, right. Dave was a new addition. Okay. With that, anyone else from the anyone else like to be recognized?
Carrie Sutton with the American Concrete Institute.
Thank you, Carrie.
This is Richard Williams, filling in for Lee Krantz with Wabo TCD.
This is Andy Taylor with chair of the ACI 318 Code Committee.
Welcome.
Micah Chappelle, Seattle's Department of Construction and Inspections, and also the Washington Association of Building Officials Technical Code Development Committee Chair. So we have several proposals you'll be hearing from us today. Thanks.
Welcome, Micah. Okay, with that, thank you, everyone. smaller audience this week. And just as we move into agenda item 2, remember we decided, agreed last week that this will be focused on the IEBC code change proposals. We've not tabled, I guess tabled is the right verb. The last 2 proposals that were considered EPD proposals until next week. Is that correct, Storian? We can say
yes,
time certain on that. Okay.
Yes, we have the existing building code today. I hope we can get everything done. If we can't, we have another meeting on June 8 next week. But before we get to the proposals, we need to approve
Yes.
3 sets of minutes.
Yep. I'm sorry. So I'm still on 2. So let's do that first. So let's we hear a motion to review and approve this agenda, please, for today.
Motion to review and approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Al.
I second that.
Thank you, Roger. Any other discussion or proposed changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. So approved. So agenda item 3, to Storian's point, we hear a motion to review and approve. Well, Storian, do you want to present which, it's not listed on the agenda. You want to?
Yes, Annette, can you show February 9th? Minutes from February 9th. Summary minutes.
Okay. Should we just look at them all in sequence here and make one big motion?
Well, we better have a motion for each one.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, can we hear a motion then to approve the, again, starting as February, what?
February
9th, 2022 meeting minutes? Someone want to make that motion, please?
I'd make that motion to approve the February 9th summary minutes as shown.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sue. Any proposed edits or changes? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. February 9th minutes are approved. Next, please.
May 11th.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 11th meeting minutes.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, any discussion or edits here? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay, May 25th meeting minutes approved. I'm sorry, did I get that incorrect? We approved the 25th. Now we're on to the June. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We just approved the.
We approved 11th, so this is the last one, May 25th.
Thank you. Now we're on 25th. Thank you. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Roger.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sue. Any discussion or edits? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Todd.
Oh, yep. Go ahead, please.
I have a comment on towards the bottom of the summary minutes there, I'm just trying to understand what the impact here. Yep, on the last proposal, it said the motion was made to table further discussion of these two proposals until legal guidance is obtained.
There was I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to understand what the impact of that is, because I remember, I think Andrea made that motion. I'm not sure if it was seconded, but I'm just trying to understand the impact of that.
I requested our Assistant Attorney General to evaluate the section that Andrea was, well, there were a few comments actually regarding this section, 19.27020, I think it was.
Sub 4, right.
Yes. So I assume we will have a little information for the next time. But again, keep in mind that the advice that the Assistant Attorney General can give us, it's not go ahead, do it or not do it. It's just an opinion that is not based of any case laws or anything. So I will have something for the next time.
No further comment. Thank you.
Al, it's a good point. I don't know if you were trying to make a point that that wasn't the only reason we tabled it. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I understand that there were, the conversation was continuing, and but I'm just wanting to make sure that this note almost infers that it was tabled because we were awaiting legal advice potentially, and I don't want the discussion to be held up based on whether or not SBCC gets legal advice or not. So I don't know that, and I don't know that the motion was seconded and it was approved by the tag to hold it up until legal advice was obtained. So that's what I was trying to point out, is that I don't want that note, the summary note, to hold up the tag's ability to move forward.
Can we modify the agenda to read the motion was made to table further discussion
period
for the meeting, whatever the date was?
Yeah, because really in my memory it was just a continuance. So I mean there were multiple reasons why we wanted.
There were, yeah, multiple reasons.
Yeah, we ran out of time, so we wanted to continue the discussion.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good catch.
Sorry, Al, I think I didn't understand the question at the beginning. I cut you off actually, so I apologize for that.
So I will amend my motion to approve the minutes as modified.
Thank you. And then with Sue, did you have the second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, thank you, Al. Any other further proposed changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay, thank you. May 25th, minutes approved. That was it, right? So with that, we can move into agenda item 4, which is to actually review the 2021 IEBC code change proposals. As we get into this, my memory is we have how many, Stoyan? Probably 13, 14?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay, 11 proposals. So obviously we're going to use Robert's rules here. This is a workshop, so it's not formal testimony. Often it takes that format. So our goal here, though, is to make sure everyone who wants to speak is heard. But we will open each time with the proponent if they are available and would like to speak to their proposal. With Robert's rules and via Zoom, let's use the raise hand feature, please, and then I will acknowledge you. Yes, Carrie. No, just testing it out. Oh, there we go.
So I am the proponent.
and the
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
this
first
proposal.
one. Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Let's I'll let Stoyan introduce it and then you have the floor. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Well, I can show it and she can introduce it. That will be much better.
Perfect. Check that
Yes.
box. All right.
Thank you,
Carrie, go ahead.
Stoyan. Yeah, I'll just do a little introductory and background on the proposal, and then we can look right at the language here. So thank you, Chairman and the committee members, for this opportunity to present the proposal. My name is Carrie Sutton. I'm a code advocacy engineer with the American Concrete Institute. For those of you not familiar with ACI, we're a professional society organized for the advancement of concrete technology. ACI is made up of member volunteers who participate in over 120 technical committees. Our documents are developed using an ANSI, American National Standard Institute accredited process. So today's proposal is to amend Chapter 4 of the existing building code. It's submitted on behalf of ACI with support of its local chapter members, as well as the International Concrete Repair Institute and its local members. So ACI 562 code requirement for assessment, repair, and rehabilitation of existing concrete structures is our code, which establishes minimum requirements for evaluation, design, construction, repair, and rehabilitation of concrete structural elements. So the proposal is intended as a modification where the code is based on the 2021 edition of the IEBC. It's intended to complement the IEBC and fill in gaps, needed gaps, by providing specific direction on how to evaluate, design, and construct repairs to structural concrete, and how to address the unique construction methods and problems associated with repair. So there are many benefits to ACI 562 in that it provides for the designer, owner, contractor, material provider, building officials. Some of these are a level of expectation of life safety, where repairs or rehabilitation is performed on concrete structural elements. It provides a clearly defined uniform requirements aimed at extending the service life of existing structures. Establishes minimum requirements for efficiency, safety, and quality of concrete repairs, and establishes clear responsibility, which is important, between the owners, designers, and the contractors. It provides the building officials with a means to evaluate rehabilitation designs. This code has been adopted in several states: Ohio, Florida, Hawaii, North Carolina, most recently South Carolina, and is being considered right now in several other states. Also recently, it was recommended for approval in the 2024 IEBC with a approval with the IBC Structural Committee in the committee action hearings in Rochester, New York. So here's the language that is proposed, basically pointing out structural repairs in accordance with ACI. A couple of things with this language, and I think we might have a few that will want to say a few words on this. As a result of the hearings in Rochester, there was some recommendation for modification of this language. So I wanted to try to propose that as well today. So, but what this does here is proposes modification of section 405.1 and adds new section 405.1.1, repairs to structural concrete, stating that repairs of structural concrete in accordance with ACI 562 are deemed to comply with the section. So I know there are a few others that might have a few comments on this. We have a couple of our supporters, Andy Taylor and Keith Kessner, that are online today as well.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. And let's move into other proponents or other stakeholders that would like to speak on this. Maybe I should go a little deeper though, since set all these amendment or all these proposals up. We do intend to take action today as the Technical Advisory Group. Technical Advisory Group is a stakeholder group with advisory responsibilities to the council. The first step though is to move it into the BFP, Building, Fire, Plumbing Committee, which is made up of a subset of appointed council members. So typically in these groups, anyone can propose amendments, but we will take a vote on the action as the TAG members. And then typically, we can recommend as proposed, recommend as modified if we make changes, or perhaps not recommend or reject whatever language we want to use. Okay, with that, would anyone else like to speak to this?
Okay, this is John Sue. I got my hand up.
John, I'm sorry. Yep, there it is. Welcome, John.
So I was on the structural committee at IBC, and one of the things that did come up was some of the language here was suggested some improvements, and I sent that to Carrie the other day, yesterday actually, and would like to propose making a couple changes here, and I believe ACI is in support of them, and she's nodding, so thank you, Carrie.
Yes.
Yeah, so part of it is there was some real heartburn with the committee and others in Rochester, the ICC hearings about the deemed to comply language. And there was some question about, does that override some other parts of the code and things like that. So what I'm suggesting is a couple things. One, just editorially, the section needs a title. So I've suggested structural concrete repairs for a title there for the section. I will say that ICC just had structural concrete, I believe, but I thought repairs was more specific here. So yeah, add the title there. Structural concrete repairs. Thank you. And then after the word concrete, repair structural concrete. Yeah, wait until they're ready to go here.
Okay.
So after repair structural concrete, the first four words up there, insert is permitted to comply.
Sorry.
Thank you. And then delete in accordance. And then delete everything after 1.7 to the comma. So from 567 1.7, delete until 405.1. Keep going through section 405.1. Right to the comma. Thank you. And that's the extent of the changes. It's semi-editorial, but again, it takes care of the what some people saw as problematic, deemed to comply language. And yeah. And that's the extent of my comments. Again, the committee, structural committee at IBC did approve this to go forward for the 2024 code.
Okay, thank you, John. Roger, please.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions probably for either Carrie or John. Well, first off, I think Stoyan, if it is a title, the editorial, if the structural concrete repairs, I think you need to capitalize concrete and repairs. I'm assuming that would get picked up in the final edits, but can either one of you inform me or describe what, no, I can't, what the exceptions are? So section 405.22, 405.2.3, or 405.2.4.1. Can you explain, I don't have the code here in front of me. Can you explain what those exceptions are and why that's part of this?
Here is the 2021.
Okay.
No, I believe it's actually the references. Well, okay. Yeah. The idea is to take the seismic out of it. Basically, this does not apply to seismic repairs. The FEMA ATC Seismic Code Support Committee, I gotta get that right, was very concerned about some of the provisions in here in ACI 562 and felt they were not appropriate for seismic repairs. So essentially, this says if you're doing any seismic repairs, this does not apply.
Okay, thank you.
And that is clearly pointed out as well in the section 1.7 of ACI 562.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
And I have a question here. So there was an attachment that was submitted with this proposal. So here is the attachment, which says 2018. So I'm a little confused if this here is part of this proposal or not, because the proposal doesn't have the amendments to Chapter 16 of the Building Code. Here is the proposal, only section 405.1. And here is the attachment. It has a new reference standard to Chapter 16 as follows.
That should be the same. It's just the attachment just repeats what was in the proposal or in the form and just adds more background. So that should be the same. So the change made here in the proposal should apply now to the attachment.
I get that, but the proposal doesn't have anything related to Chapter 16 and the attachment does.
I think you need to transfer that, adding the reference standard to the proposal. I think that's what
that's correct. Yes.
So take this where it says from add new reference standard to Chapter 16, all that plus the table part needs to be included as part of the proposal.
Let's concentrate on this, and then I will add it to the Word document. The second question I have is, what is going to happen if this is approved here for Washington, but disapproved by the ICC during the ICC process?
I think it's okay if Washington adopts it without, it being in the model code for next time. We're going to be proposing the same change to the language that we just did here, or similar change at Group B for ICC.
And just again, this code, the standard has been adopted in several other states, so it can stand alone as a for the individual jurisdiction.
Andrew, please.
Hi. Just very briefly, I'm here to speak on behalf of this proposal for two reasons. One is that I'm a practicing structural engineer in Washington State, have been for about 25 years. I personally depend on ACI 562 for much of the concrete repair work that we design already, and I would be very happy to see it officially adopted by the state. The second reason that I am here is that I am also chair of the ACI 318 Building Code Committee. And I want to just point out that the ACI codes are all developed using the same ANSI standardized or ANSI approved consensus standard process. And ACI 318, which is, of course, already used in Washington State, is coordinated with ACI 562. It's also coordinated with, or ACI 562 is also coordinated to the degree that it needs to be with AFCE 41, which of course is the seismic evaluation and upgrade standard for concrete structures. So in summary, I just want to say that this represents part of an overall kind of system, and I think it would be a real step forward to adopt this in Washington State.
Thank you, Andrew. John?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to respond a little bit more completely to Stoyan's question. At Group B, I would not expect there to be a lot of opposition. There was only one person who stood up in opposition to it in Rochester. While they had some fairly substantial concerns, the committee did vote, to approve it. So I would, and again, would not expect that person will be persuasive at Group B should they continue to oppose it or at the public comment hearing. So I would not expect this to fail. There's a lot of support for it.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm still not clear on where the reference standard goes. That's not chapter 16, is it?
This is Micah. Yes, chapter 16 and the IEBC is reference standards.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Snap my mind out of IBC. Thank you. My mistake.
I had the same issue.
All right. I'm on page or track now. All right. Any other discussion on this then? Okay, are we, if not, the motion would be to recommend as modified to the BFP committee. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to approve that and send it on to the BFP.
Thank you, Roger. As modified.
As modified, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Who is that, please?
Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, any further deliberation on this? Okay, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you all. Okay, second proposal, please.
Lee Krantz.
This is Richard Williams filling in for Lee Krantz.
Welcome. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so this is in this code section states that platform wheelchair lifts may be used as a component of an accessible route, but it does not indicate what types of lifts are allowed. This section refers to ASME standard A18.1, which allows two different types of lifts, vertical and inclined. So this proposal simply identifies that both vertical and inclined types of platform lifts are permitted to be installed in existing buildings as long as they're in accordance with the standard. And this was already tentatively approved at the national level, a unanimous vote. I think there's an editorial change to be made in this. Looks like the code section is the 2018 section 305.8.3, should be, I believe, 306.7.8. That's what I had.
Say again, the section number?
I believe the 2021 section number is 306.7.8.
This is Roger. I just want to point out that proposal number 007 is also titled platform lists, and it refers to 306.7.8. So one of my questions will be, what are the differences between these two? So.
Yeah, that's and I can talk about that. I will actually probably, well, I'll talk about that when we get to it, but there are differences. We broke them out because the purpose of this was just to clarify the language that talks about the fact that there are two types allowed.
Richard, this is a working session, so if you think it's helpful to introduce that one now, unless anyone's opposed, feel free.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Well, I'd actually like to withdraw that proposal because it was disapproved at the national level, and we feel there are enough issues with it, because what it talked about as compared to this one, that proposal talks about the kind of the placement of the incline lift on a stairway, and it was deemed, we kind of struggle with this one, to be honest, as a group, and we feel it's better to withdraw it at this point at the state level.
Okay, should we just take that action right now?
Well, just a minute. Which proposal? I just want to make sure we get the right one withdrawn.
yeah, and just for everyone's, we haven't made a motion yet, so that's why I'm taking the.
Yeah, so that's I didn't want to confuse anything, but my understanding is that this is 21-GP2-007 is the one that we're proposing to withdraw.
Is everyone clear on that and okay with?
Yeah, because there is another one that we have on 306.7.1, which is 006. Right? Yes. And that might be the one that is being asked about here.
Yeah, that's actually, John, to your point, of the four that I'm about to present, they kind of double up on the code sections. So two proposals deal with one, two with the other. So it is a little confusing.
Okay, and I'm not trying to create confusion in our process here, but if it's helpful to introduce multiple so we understand the context, so that feel free, but I'll leave it to others that are more knowledgeable in these areas.
I mean, they did two, 005 and 006 deal with two different issues.
Yeah,
so that's why we put submitted them separately. If we want to talk about them together, I think they are independent of each other.
Okay.
So
you're recommending let's go back to 004 and isolate that.
Because and similarly, whereas in the case of 004 and 007, where they both deal with the same code section, they are attacking different parts of that section. Okay. 004 is clarification, and 007 was a modification to the text. Okay. Both modifications to the text, but you understand what I'm saying. It's actually an actual code changes as opposed to more of a clarification.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Let's go back to 004 then, please. Okay. Any other proposed amendments on this before we go into a motion in our discussion? We don't need to go into a motion to deliberate in this format.
Okay.
Well, we need a motion for 004.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I was just clarifying that we can. This is a.
Oh, okay.
Before we make a motion, we can still discuss proposed amendments and
Okay, I would make a motion to approve as submitted.
It will be as modified because of the section number change.
Oh, okay, as modified.
Okay.
This is Chris. I'll second.
Thank you, Richard. Then Chris. Okay, now any deliberation on the motion? Okay. Are we okay, Stoyan, on the motion?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other discussion or deliberation, let's take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, who made the motion?
Well, that's what I was checking, Stoyan.
Yeah, so if it's, I thought Roger did, but I'm hearing second thought. So did Richard, if it's Richard, it's not okay because he's not a TAC member.
Thank you, that's.
Oh, sorry.
No, Richard, my apologies. That's what I was at that point was checking in the background. So thank you for catching that, Stoyan.
I'll get the hang of it.
Stoyan, I will make a motion to approve the proposal as modified. If you just want to change Richard to Roger.
I'll still second it.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Roger, then Chris. Okay, now one more chance for deliberation. If not, let's vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay, approved as modified. By the way, on that first one, don't we need to do approved as modified also?
Was it modified?
Yes, I think both were. Thank you. Okay, now let's move into 005.
Okay, it's Richard Williams representing Volvo TCD on behalf of Lee Kranz. For 005, when alterations to an area of primary function are proposed, we go to IEBC section 306.7.1, which says where an alteration affects the accessibility to or contains an area of primary function, the route to the area of primary function shall be accessible. The intent of this sentence is clear, but the next sentence to this section is not clear, in my opinion, because it says that the accessible route to the primary function area shall include toilet facilities and drinking fountains serving the area of primary function. And I've always read this to mean that only the accessible route to the toilet facilities and drinking fountains is required to be accessible. However, many interpret that differently, have understood that to mean something different. The IEBC commentary states that the toilet facilities and drinking fountains must be upgraded to full accessibility. And the ADA community also understands this to be the case by and large. So we wrote this proposal to put the requirements in the code language rather than rely on the commentary. And this proposal makes it clear that the intent of this provision is to improve toilet facilities and drinking fountains to be accessible and to provide an accessible route of travel to them from an area of primary function. So that in a nutshell is what it was. This was also approved at the national level by a vote of 14-0.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Anyone else like to speak to this?
I have a comment. I have a comment on that. I wasn't prepared. I would help otherwise. But so, did you folks consult with 2010 ADA standards on that?
Discussed it with Marshall Mass.
Did you? So the recommendation. Well, I think the U.S. Access Board had some interpretation on that, and I wasn't prepared. I would check it otherwise, but we don't want to create a conflict with the 2010 ADA standards on that one. Again, I'm not saying there is a conflict. I was wondering if you guys coordinated with the language.
Go ahead, John.
John?
We didn't well, okay, we've coordinated with Marcia Maz, who is one of the people who used to be on the Access Board, and basically she's one of the advocates at the ICC process. And the people we've talked to, excuse me, agree that this is the way it's supposed to be. And it's certainly, quite frankly, the way, as Rich kind of said, different building officials interpret it differently, and this is the way I interpreted it anyway.
Yeah.
And the way I was enforcing it. So there's quite a mix, and so that was part of the why we decided to put this in was to, okay, let's put everyone on the same, the same plane.
Yeah.
I personally have issues with the terms that are used because you guys are proposing the accessible route of travel, which is it's different from accessible path of travel. So the accessible path of travel, as it is defined, includes, in this case, the drinking fountains and the toilet facilities. And the accessible route of travel is the same as the accessible route. Mm-hmm. So the path of travel and the route of travel, these are different terms. So if the TAC approves it, would you agree? I can double check and research that.
So, Marcia had made a similar comment. I guess I would just say that we're actually striking language that talks about the accessible route. It's already in the code, but I agree that there has been some discussion about this, and she brought it up about the idea that there might be some slight discord with the ADA in this regard.
John and Micah, do you want to comment on that?
Micah, why don't you go on that one? I've got a different comment.
I was just going to, Rich kind of addressed it, that we're really not adding language, or we're just modifying the existing language to be more clear. It's more of a clarification of intent and how to apply this, Stoyan. So the accessible route's already mentioned in here. It's not a new term that we're introducing in this section. So Rich covered that.
Okay. John, different?
Yeah, just separately, I think the exception, by the way, language is also new there. And again, we felt this was similarly just a clarification of how people were approaching this anyway. So instead, it's making sure you talk about the cumulative costs don't exceed the 20%. And then wanted to make sure that we included, route of travel, toilet facilities, and drinking fountains in that to correspond with the change we're making above.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any other discussion or proposed changes? Peter, please.
Yeah, just a question about the cumulative cost exception. Could you guys run me through that one there, trying to figure out what that really means? Educate me on that one.
Yeah,
you will.
So, I don't know, Rich, you want to take that one?
Oh, go ahead, John.
So ordinarily, you could read this as saying the cost of each individual component, as long as they're less than 20%, you could take multiple components and then say, well, each one is less than 20%. So even though the total cost is maybe it's 50%, that'd be a little extreme, but suppose it is, then I still don't have to, I don't have to make these improvements. I can just add up these costs and say, oh, it's going to cost me too much, and I don't have to do them. The idea is to take, the cost of the restroom, of the drinking fountain, of improving the path of travel, add those costs all up, and then say, you don't require 20%.
Yeah.
20% is kind of your cap.
Right, and I would say I'm just adding.
Okay. So why 20%?
It's the number that's out there. It's been in the code forever.
Okay, all right.
It's 80. I believe it's related to ADA, but I'm not sure.
Yes, it is. It is.
It is. It's what the ADA establishes as the amount, kind of the maximum amount that has to be spent for accessibility improvements.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Peter. Al, please.
Oh, I just have an editorial question here. In the first sentence, it talks about the route to the primary function area shall be accessible. And in your clarifying sentence, you say including the route from the area of primary function. Does that have any? One's to and one's from. Does that have any impact?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it'd have an impact. It's a good point. I'm open to changing it. It's fine.
Well, I think what we're doing is saying from the function to the facility, to these facilities.
Yes, John's correct.
As
it should be from the primary function, as stated in the sentence we have.
Yeah. The other sentence more talks about things like if you're doing a main entry, you know, you want you want to be able to get people to the primary function. For these types of facilities, so for restrooms and things like that, you want the path to be from the primary function to these facilities.
Okay, good question. Thank you. Roger, please.
Yeah, my question is similar to the 04, 07. 05 and 06 are both related to the same section. And in fact, when I look at 06, it does not, the sentence that is changed in 05 is not changed in 06. So I'm suggesting that we look at these, well, or I guess I'm asking the question, are these two also completely separate? Should they be considered together or not?
Micah, Rich.
We did keep them separate, Roger, for a specific purpose, where if one didn't get approved and the other did, we're still getting, you know, a clarification of some code section. We can discuss them together, but if they both get approved, of course, there would be a little bit of correlation that needed to occur. However, if the voting goes where one of them will move forward and one of them doesn't, we didn't want to have them combined to where if someone had issues with one of them, that all of it went down as a code change proposal. So that's why they're separate. They do kind of address different things, even though they're in the same section. So yeah. We can discuss them together, but we would like to not combine them as a single vote, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you advise, the proponents advise that we discuss both and then make separate motions?
Again, I think they are separate topics.
Yeah,
I don't think you need to talk to them together. I don't. They're basically they're cumulative. One addresses the path of travel. This one just says what's the priority. I mean the second one that Roger is referring to.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Thank you. I'm here. We have plenty of time to synchronize them. Okay. Mark, please.
Yeah. I was asking about the cumulative costs. And suggesting maybe we should put the project or the permitted work, because we use this cumulative cost in substantial improvement in flood zones. And on that, we have a time period of 10 years. And this one, the cumulative cost, is that going to be per project on each building, or would it be something that as you progress on the building, you could say, hey, well, last time we put 10% in, this time we only have to put another 10% in because of our last project. You know, that's, I thought should be kind of cleared up.
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
You're muted.
Sorry, Rich had his hand up. I thought I was going to defer to him, but.
Oh yeah, well, thanks, John. I was just going to say that, you know, I think the 20% that we're talking about is specific to this section. We're just talking about, you know, not so much what you were talking about with other costs, unless I'm misinterpreting what you said. But I think it is specific to accessibility upgrades in this section.
And it's not intended to be accumulated over time. I mean, that's not the way it's written.
Right.
Most, and I don't think it's the way it's been done. Again, this exception has been in the code for 15 years, 6, maybe more. So I don't think that's the way people have been interpreting it. It's trying to accumulate it over time. It's each project.
Yeah, John, I kind of remember some classes where they're talking about a path to a bar that was a basement bar, and one project they put the elevator shaft in, and then the next project they put the elevator in. So that was kind of my thought is want to be specific that it was only going to deal per the permitted activity of that portion of it, or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, is the intention is to every time you do an alteration to a building that you're going to incrementally improve the accessibility of it. So and so I'm relating that to substantial improvement of flood houses too, where should it be cumulative for the building or should it be project specific?
I think Stoyan's got it highlighted there that it's intended to be per project. And I don't know, that's a interesting one that you talked about, that case of putting in a shaft once and then in one project and then doing the elevator next, actually putting the cab in and things like that. That's fairly unusual. I've never seen that done.
That was an example Steve Thomas used in his classes. So that's what brought that to mind.
Interesting. Okay.
I think I read that as well. I think it's in the commentary too, where they talk about putting in a shaft and not the elevator, which is I've always found that interesting too. But there's but I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, it certainly would not be disallowed if someone wants to approach it that way. That's certainly a way to do it. And yes, the intent of this part of the code is to make continuous improvements to the path of travel and to accessibility. But the 20% is intended to be per project. And if they want to phase it the way that like the commentary says, which is again not code, that's certainly an option the owner has. If they want to take their 20% and spend it, which would be a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing. If they want to spend it, this time they'll do the shaft, and next time they'll put the cab in and everything else. That's great. I mean, that's certainly getting better accessibility. I think again, given that we're just trying to, what can we do with the project that they've got there? That's the idea.
Thank you. Is that sufficient, Mark? Okay, thank you. Peter, please.
Yeah, it seems to me in this particular hypothetical case we're talking about, putting the shaft in would be considered not providing an accessible route and therefore might not count underneath this, and then putting the elevator in. So basically, could you interpret this as, okay, the part that I'm improving the accessibility is putting the elevator in, but the shaft is separate from that? Is that an interpretation that's allowed here?
Yeah, I think that would be a bit of a stretch myself. If it's a shaft, you're putting the shaft welds for an elevator, you clearly label it on the plans. Personally, I would certainly look at that as being part of you trying to improve the path of travel. If there could be building officials who might look at it that way, I think that would be a little bit extreme myself, but
it seems to me odd that you would, break that project up into two. An elevator shaft without an elevator is useless. And so counting them as two projects, I don't know.
Again, if it's like a phase project, then that's what they can do at the time. And that, I guess that's, it's not prohibited. I mean, again, I think that making steps toward better accessibility is a good thing. if they run out of money, take a church who doesn't have a lot of money and they want to spend little bits at a time and they can't do the fundraising in the second phase for the actual cab, okay, well, that'll take some time to do that.
And I would also say that, I think that should be pointed out that was an example that's been put out there more of kind of what John was saying is reinforcing the idea that the purpose of this section is to encourage increased accessibility over time, right? And so I think that was just a kind of an example of, oh, hey, you can do the shaft and then you can do the elevator. Would some building officials maybe balk at that and try to make the argument that you'd have to that they aren't broken out, that one goes with the other? Yeah, probably might get some arguments, but I don't know if I'd have a problem with breaking it out. It's just that I think it's more of just an example to be put out there.
I guess my ultimate question is does that affect your end 20%? And is it a way to get around that value? And so reduce it down to 10% or something by splitting it up.
I think actually it works in the reverse. I may have spoken slightly before. The idea that the 20% is a minimum you're supposed to spend.
Okay.
So the 20% is a cap, sort of a cap, but you're supposed to spend up to that amount is the way it's written.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think the reason we put this in here was just to make it clear that this is the toilet facilities and drinking fountains are now lumped into that 20%, which always existed. It's not a separate category. It's you consider these elements as part of that 20%.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks for that explanation. So,
okay. In the ADA standards itself, it specifically says alterations made to provide an accessible path of travel to the altered area will be deemed disproportionate to the overall addition when the cost exceeds 20% of the cost of the alteration to the primary function area. That's the language that drives that 20% disproportionality figure. And in doing so, it focuses on essentially trying to get a non-conforming building closer to conformance within that 20% spending, with the first part focused on access to the building or to the area of primary, and then secondarily for restrooms, etc.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Micah.
Thanks for all the comments. I do hope everyone supports this change. We did submit this at the national level, where we did get feedback that this is consistent with the way the federal language is and should apply, and the intent. And the national level committee did vote this unanimously to approve it. So we do hope you support it today as well. It is a clarification, and it will function better for the code officials and of course for the applicant on exception number 1. So please support. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Okay, with that, unless there are other comments, can we hear a motion to approve as proposed, I believe?
This is Al. I'd make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Was that Al and then Michael? Is that what I heard?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I need just a deliberation. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay. Approved as submitted. Thank you. Moving on to 006, please.
This is Richard Williams once again, filling in for Lee Krantz once again. And Mike Barth actually provided a really good segue for this proposal. For projects that involve an alteration affecting an area containing a primary function, it's often difficult to decide which of the accessibility improvements should be included in the scope of the project. And we wrote this with the idea that if the improvements to the accessible route to the area primary function are within the 20% of the construction budget, then those are more important than improving other items like the restrooms and the drinking fountains. Again, I think that's consistent with what Mike was pulling from the ADA. Without an accessible route, people with disabilities aren't able to, get participate in the activities in that area of primary function. So this code change just provides guidance for designers and building officials to say that, priority shall be given to the improvements affecting the accessible route to the primary function area. And I think it's important to note if the cost to improve the accessible route exceeds 20% of the budget for say like an elevator, then other improvements such as restrooms and drinking fountains would still apply. And obviously the shaft example that we came up with complicate what the example I just gave, but it's just that acknowledgement that you still have to do something to get to the 20%. So yeah, I won't go belabor this. It's just I'm sure we'll have a discussion here about this, but this was also approved at the national level, and there was some discussion about this, but it was approved on an unanimous vote. So.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this? Roger, please.
Sorry, mute button issue. I guess I am a little bit, there are people much more who understand exact code language better than I, but I'm wondering if priority, is that too vague, or is it, are we trying to tell people to do one piece rather than the other? I guess I'm wondering, is priority an enforceable? How there are building officials here. When there's code language that says priority, is that an enforceable term?
Yes. In a word, former building official, sorry, but
I would agree. I would say yes, we can have that as the priority.
As
Okay.
well.
And I will say, essentially, this is how Seattle was approaching it anyway.
Okay.
It's just a nod to the fact that there is no real priority indicated in there now. We're trying to provide some clarity as to the direction to take on this.
Yeah, and the idea is not to. It is somewhat vague so that there is some flexibility there. You want to say you have to do it in this particular order because sometimes there's reasons for doing other things. But what we didn't want to do was say, okay, I'm going to say that, I'm going to, instead of high pile carpet that's there now, I'm going to put, say, a hardwood floor down. And that makes it, your accessibility better for wheelchairs because it's easier to roll on them. So I'm going to count that toward my 20%. That to me, that's not the same thing as putting in like a ramp or as before the elevator or something else that actually gets people into the building or lets them really have access to primary function.
I can understand that and agree. I guess I'm the judgment or interpretation of of whether you're prioritizing one over another is then left up to the building official. Is that correct? I mean, John, you said that that's how you interpret it and that's how you're enforcing it. And so.
Yes, there's going to be some, judgment needed by the building officials and whoever's proposing, the project.
Okay.
And hopefully, though, too, we'll have a good discussion about that.
I have a question for Seattle. So the priority is related to the 20%. And as it is proposed, it's kind of confusing for me. Stoyan talking, not the managing director here, right? And you know, the priority is if you exceed the 20% and you cannot comply with 100% with the requirements. So then you start prioritizing, and here is the list that is provided by the U.S. Access Board. Again, you know, if the project is disproportional, you know, if it exceeds the 20%, then you start prioritizing. And here is the list provided. I don't know what is here. But can you please?
I think you need to mute Sean.
Yeah, I was trying, but. Okay, thank you.
I got it.
So, my question is, you know, because you guys stated in Seattle, but how the prioritization goes, you know, it's used in general, or if the project exceeds the 20% cap. I think that's important. So moving back to the proposal, how it is now, the proposal is part of the main section, and I think, again, as a personal opinion, it belongs right here.
I don't know if you get to that exception. That's the problem, I think, without, well, I don't know. The way we do it is you know, okay, you're required, without looking at the actual code language, the way I was enforcing it when I was there was, okay, you've got 20% to spend. So if you got $100,000 budget here, you know, 20% of that, so $20,000 gets spent on these improvements. Within that 20%, then we would say, okay, what can you do within that 20%? Can you put a ramp in? Can you put a lift in? Can you do something like that? Can you improve? Go ahead and, you know, fix up the bathrooms, whatever. So I don't know if it makes a difference. I guess the way I'm reading, I don't know if it makes a whole lot of difference, because you're still going to be capped by the 20% exception anyway. If it lives there, you know, in the main paragraph. I don't know if it makes any difference how you do that.
If you want to provide all this, and very often it exceeds 20% with smaller projects.
Yeah, sure.
So this is when you start prioritizing. You know, you may have a person that will say, okay, I will install a drinking fountain. That's okay, but it's more important to provide the accessible entrance and the accessible route, because you may not be able to get to the drinking fountain. It's related to the 20%.
Yeah, but I think it also works the other way, is that even as if it doesn't, if you're going to do more, I think you should still be looking at the major improvements rather than the little picky ones. But that's so I don't know. Again, I don't know if it'll make a difference in how it's enforced.
Bill, do you have a related comment?
Yeah, I actually got a question. That list of 6 items of priority that you showed, I'm not familiar with that. Do you have to follow that order, for instance, before you can install a drinking fountain? You have to comply with all of the other items above it first?
No. What I showed on the screen, this prioritization was from the U.S. Access Board that actually, no, this is from the Department of Justice. And it's coming from the 2010 ADA standards. IBC is intended to, you know, to be consistent with the 2010 ADA standards, but unfortunately there are some differences. So this prioritization, it's coming from the 2010 ADA standards, and it's a good idea if the Washington state requirements align with that. I know Micah will disagree with me probably, but.
Go ahead, John and Micah.
Yeah, I mean, again, yes, it can be the code can be consistent. It can also, we get chastised regularly if it's less than what the access board would require at the national level. Again, if you read what it's the language that sort of was just showing on the ADA language was it should be, it's not absolute. To answer Bill's question, you do not have to do each one of these in order. It's again, that's why it's priority. It's not you shall do these in this order. You prioritize and should be is kind of looser language.
All right, thanks.
To add to that, sorry, Ed, go ahead, Micah.
No, go ahead, Mike. You're fine.
I was just going to say to add to that, the only time the prioritization really comes up is when you are talking about that 20% cap. In any given project, if they're doing drinking fountains or parking and all of that, that's fine. But the prioritization comes in when they don't want to do everything and they have to limit what they're doing based on, or they want to limit what they're doing because they don't want to spend more than 20%. That's when the prioritization comes in.
Okay, Micah.
I think everybody's kind of saying the same thing here as to what this ADAG shows here and what our proposal shows. There's no misalignment here. The language we're providing or proposing, even according to, like you said, when we talk about when we do stakeholder outreach at a national level, we check with the experts on these sections. And as John mentioned, when we get it wrong, they let us know. Believe me. This one, however, they let us know this is correct. This is the intent of what the accessibility guide is getting at, and what we should have in here as guidance for the code officials for enforcement, or even the applicant for understanding what we're going to look at as a priority. Right now, there's nothing in there that says what the priority is. So that can be negotiated. You can spend time figuring out what that is. I think this is getting to what everybody is saying. I think we're all saying somewhat, what's both sides of the same coin or whatever it is. I don't know how that saying goes, but I think we're all saying the same thing. We're getting to the same place, just a different method. There's no conflict here. This is supported at the national level by the appropriate stakeholders, and this is just giving guidance to the code official and the applicant on where that priority should be, without having to go to a separate document like the accessibility guide, which a lot of people aren't using necessarily. So, they're just going to be working out of the IEBC for these items. So this is really a clarification for those parties, and urge your support again.
Thank you, Micah. Peter?
Yeah, if we go back to that priority list, I'd just like to make a couple of comments on it. I mean, items 1 and 2 are your primary entities that you need to do. I would, prefer to see those lumped together. Being able to get into a building and then not being able to get to the event has been a major problem for me. That is something that is invariably pisses me off, but never mind. Anyhow, getting access to the restroom should be certainly number 3, but access to a telephone anymore these days should probably be put down or even dropped from this list. Access to a drinking fountain is far more important than access to a telephone in these days and age. So, and in fact, parking and storage parking especially is probably more important. So just some comments there on that. And while I'm here, the subject of flooring came up, and I just wanted to point out something that you may or may not have thought about, but oftentimes hotel carpets have an underlayment which has a grain in it, which will make you look like a drunken sailor going down it in a wheelchair. I don't know if that's something that ever comes up in the code, but it is one of those accessibility improvements, which is akin to putting in wood floor versus shag carpet or deep pile carpet. But even if you put in a dense pile, the underlayment under that is an important point of accessibility there, because they can get incredibly difficult physically to move across. So I'll stop there. But anyhow, I just wanted to comment on this prioritization list and how it might get redone. So I don't know if we're in charge of that or not. So I don't think so.
No. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, just responding to that exact point. No, this is not under our control. It's not in the building code. So ADAG is under control of the feds. And yeah, I understand, I wasn't trying not to diminish the importance of being able to navigate on the, across floors and things like that. Just, saying that we did want to get people to the primary functions as being more important than just fixing your rolling resistance. But yeah,
there's
lots of improvements and things that
the
could be
physics
made.
of the matter.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of improvements that could be made, and also, but those are again beyond the scope usually of a building. You can replace your carpets and flooring and things like that without a permit. So that's not going to be something we're going to be regularly enforcing or enforcing at all, probably.
Okay, thanks.
I think this is a good reason to keep the sentence fairly benign by just saying priority shall be given, yada, yada, instead of including the entire list, because I think we can all assume that list is likely going to change. The ADA is likely going to change that. And this way, there's no conflict.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was our intent, was to provide flexibility by keeping it open-ended. And I was just wanting to say that in what Stoyan and Mike had talked about with kind of linking our comment about the priority to the 20%, my opinion, I don't think it's a problem to leave it where it is, because it doesn't really create a conflict. I think to their point, you'll get to this priority list when you get to the when you exceed 20%. I don't personally think it warrants changing the way it appears in our comment.
Okay, thank you. With that, is there any other comment, or can we entertain a motion to approve as presented?
This is Mike. I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you.
This is Roger. I'll second that.
Thank you, Roger. Any other deliberation? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, so approved. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving into 018, please.
So 7 was withdrawn, so we'll skip 7. And the next one is 18. Sue?
I can, I'll talk about this. So this is similar to an amendment that to City of Tacoma has used for quite some time in their IEBC. So it's really for an additional requirement for buildings. Sorry, I'm gonna put my headphones on. I've got a lot of noise here. Okay.
So this is a code amendment that adds additional requirements, seismic requirements for alterations that are increasing the occupant load for an unreinforced masonry or hollow clay tile building. And so and this is in addition to requirements in IEBC 503.4 through 503.11, alterations that where the occupant load of the building increases by more than 20% for groups A, I, E, R, M, B, or H, or S used for storage of hazardous materials, and for buildings assigned to seismic categories D, C, D, E, or F, and where the building structural system includes reinforced masonry or hollow clay tile bearing walls. The alteration work shall comply with all applicable requirements in sections 503.19.1 through 19.4, which are listed below. Where there is a change in occupancy with the alteration, the most restrictive seismic requirements in accordance with 506, IEBC 506, in this section shall comply. In addition, the cumulative effects of alteration when compared with the original occupant load that have had an increase in occupant over time exceeding the 20% shall comply with these provisions. And there are some exceptions. Cumulative increase in the occupant load of less than 50 for occupant categories A or I. So if you're under 50, it's actually not really it's an occupant load increase of 50, but it's just considered a de minimis. And cumulative increase in occupant load of less than 25 for E occupancies. R3 occupancies are exempt, as well as all other occupants are occupancies with an increase of 5 dwelling or sleeping units or less. Cumulative increase in the occupant load less than 100 for occupancy categories M or B, or cumulative increase in the occupant load of less than 10 for H occupancies or S occupancies using hazardous materials. So we just wanted to have some exceptions where if somebody was doing a small tenant improvement, they're not going to be on the hook for doing some more significant seismic improvements to the building. So IEBC 503.19.1, this is for large buildings, for buildings 4 or more stories or buildings more than 12,000 square feet. They need to perform seismic evaluation in accordance with IEBC 304.3. Any lateral resisting elements shall be required to comply with design elements for reduced seismic forces in accordance with IEBC 304.3.2 were found to be deficient. The next section, 19.2, is for parapet bracing. Buildings with parapet constructed of unreinforced masonry where the parapet height to thickness ratio exceeds 1.5 to 1 shall be required to have parapets anchored, removed, or altered to resist out of plane seismic forces unless an evaluation demonstrates compliance of such items. Use of reduced seismic forces in accordance with IEBC 304.3.2 shall be permitted. Floor and roof wall anchors. The alteration work shall include the alteration of wall anchors at the floor and roof lines unless an evaluation determines compliance with existing wall anchorage. And this is again allows use of reduced seismic forces. Bracing of partitions and non-structural walls, unreinforced masonry partitions and non-structural walls within the alteration area and adjacent to egress paths from the alteration area shall be anchored, removed, or altered to resist out of plane seismic forces. And use of reduced seismic forces in accordance with IEBC 304.3.2 is permitted. IEBC 805.5, it's similar to the amendment we just went over, very similar, in fact. this isn't just a different section. If it's for level 2 alterations section. And so it's exactly the same requirements that I just went over for the prescriptive section in the IBC. So we can just kind of fast forward through because this is exactly the same proposal. If you just filter down. And just another comment that there is not a requirement for this same section in level 3 alterations, because anything that's in level 3 is also required to comply with level 2 alteration requirements. So this is the exact same language, just repeated in the level 2 alterations section. And so you can just float down to the end here. And this is important for resiliency of our buildings in Washington, especially these older non-compliant buildings that are unreinforced masonry. And it is important to require over time for these buildings to get upgraded. I mean, that's important for our seismic resiliency within the state. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sue. Go ahead, Mark.
Just to note, I picked up on exception number 3. It says all instead of, it says ball instead of all.
Oh.
RP occupancy, some ball other.
Oh, whoops. Okay, yeah, that's a.
Just thought I'd point that out.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Take off the B on that.
Which one?
You're just there, Stoyan. Go back. There you go. Exception 3. Ball to all.
It should be all, not ball.
The other thing is that doesn't this parapet bracing show up under alterations and re-roofing section?
It does, but this type there may be situations where they're not touching the roof, but they are doing an alteration for this URM building, and it may be a large alteration to that increases the occupant load, and so really our main concern is where you're adding more people to one of these buildings, because that's our real danger is people, and so we want to make sure that any type of improvements where you're significantly increasing the occupant load, that you're going to take a look at seismic. Even if you're not touching the roof, even if they're not touching the exterior, you're adding a lot of people to a building. We want you to look at the seismic.
And does that also coordinate with the change of use? I mean, because basically that would be when you're usually getting more people, change of occupancy.
Yeah, so it does coordinate somewhat. We actually, originally the proposal was included the change of occupancy section, alterations to that, but we decided to scale that back and just look at our real focus was increased occupant load. And you may change the use, but our real concern is when you're changing the when you're increasing occupant load, you're adding more people. So we just wanted to focus specifically on adding occupant load.
So should there be a pointer in the change of occupancy pointing to this section?
Well, there is, if you go up to you see it does say where there is a change of occupancy with the alteration, the most restrictive seismic requirements in accordance with IEBC 10006 and this section shall comply. So there is a pointer here.
Okay, but if I was just looking under change of occupancy or change of use, would I be triggered to know that they now have to do this additional work?
Well, you know, that's a good point. I think that, but maybe we would probably want to point it back to that.
Sue, if I can throw it here, I don't, you know, the change that there's a little bit of confusion, I think, where there does change of occupancy sections and requirements stand by themselves, and there's been an argument out there that they do, that those are, you know, that if you're doing an alteration, you still have to come to these other sections. So yeah, you know, I don't know if you know, if you're doing a pure change of occupancy, this doesn't get triggered, right? This is under the if you're doing alterations. So you know, I don't know. Technically, it might be helpful to some degree, but it's technically code-wise not necessary.
I think it might be awfully hard to change occupancy without adding, yeah, you're doing a 20% increase in occupant load.
Yeah, you're probably going to be doing something
without doing a tenant improvement, an alteration of some kind.
Yeah. The other, while I'm on here, there is one more typo that needs to be fixed. Stoyan, if you could scroll up to the beginning section in 503.19. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, where it talks about section 503.19.1. 1, 2, sorry, 4th line. And through 530.
Yeah, 503.
Yeah.
503 or 530?
503, both of them.
The next section, or the next, yeah, 503.
Okay, thank you. John, anything else? No, thank you. Roger?
Yeah, my question is about the trigger on basically the first sentence that you're showing, and it's been a long time since I've been in an English class, and the rules for commas and ands and ors, but Sue, when you read this, I guess, is the intent that this would get put in place when you are increasing the occupant load and you are in a seismic design category C, D, or F, and there is unreinforced masonry? Because when you read it, about 2/3 of the way down the second line, you said "and for buildings assigned to seismic." And as an engineer reading this, that would make it more clear that all three of those have to apply, not an or, which would make this any buildings in seismic C, D, or E, or an F that have masonry. And I don't think that that's the intent. So again,
yes, all of them would apply at once. If you're you've increased the occupant load more than 20% for those particular occupancy groups.
And for buildings, I would like to see "and" added right before "for," and for buildings.
On the second line, yeah.
Yeah, it's just as clear as, you know, if I'm an engineer just reading this.
Okay, I agree with that.
And then I'm not sure if that needs to be in the section below. It would also be added down in the 805.5.
You know,
correct.
I don't know if you want to do that, because I could almost read that as being any building assigned to SDC C through F.
Well, that's where, John, I'm unclear on commas and ands and ors.
I think this a lot of people would read that as separating it out as being a separate condition. So instead of cumulative among the three, maybe that'd be something Sue, we could look at turning into a bullet list somehow, meaning all the following or something, like, rather than trying to string all these things together in one sentence.
I understand what you're trying to do, and I support it. I just want to make sure that trigger in both of those sections is appropriate. is written appropriately, so, and is clear.
Would it correct it if in the third line, you took out the comma and the and after F?
I think it's still a little
It
ambiguous.
might be better just to have a bullet list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So alterations where meeting the following.
Yeah.
And then
all
colon
of the following or something. Yeah.
Meeting all of the following conditions.
Do we want to try this on the fly or?
Sure, if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, as well.
Oh boy. Okay.
Or no, John, is that not recommended? Is that we give direction and send it to the BFP for?
Alterations meeting the following condition, all of the following conditions.
Yeah, we can give it a shot, but I get a little nervous about writing this much on the fly. But that's okay. Let's give it a shot.
So if we have to, we can table this and give a chance for it to review, and then next week we'll take it up right away.
Well, let's just maybe try it. And
okay.
I don't think it's that
much. We have the brain trust here.
Alterations meeting all of the following conditions.
We'll have a couple more
and a colon
opportunities to fix it. Yeah, if we need to.
Yeah.
And then
bullet one. You take out where, I think, then.
When the occupant load.
I don't think you need either.
Okay, just say the occupant load, capital T, the occupant load.
Yeah.
And then go all the way to the comma, number 2.
Yep.
And then just capital B, buildings assigned.
Then the next one gets split too, yeah.
And then after the F, period. And then capital T, the buildings, structural system.
Then after bearing walls, period.
And then period after bearing walls, and then go back to the main paragraph for the next.
Yeah, I think that part of the sentence needs to be translated up into the charging, the first, yeah.
Right. The alter
shall
be required.
With, yeah.
And then the last 2 sentences can just be back to the paragraph.
Yeah. So from where there is a change of occupancy, yeah. Oh, that just gets moved to a separate paragraph underneath after the bullet list. So yeah.
Like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And then that same formatting gets repeated in section 8.
Okay, maybe before we do that, Bill, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, just real quick, not to sound like a grammar snob, but on line 2, you should add a comma between E and F.
Yep.
It's known as an Oxford comma, and in some precedents, it does make a difference legally.
Yep.
And it's consistent with what you did in line 1.
Thank you, Bill. Everyone reread that first sentence. Is that what you intend?
Yes.
Okay.
And you said you need to have the same right here?
Yeah, basically break that next paragraph into the same bullet list.
Except you would comply with sections 805.5.1 through 805.5.4. So those the section references are slightly different.
Yeah, 503.19. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I should have listened. Okay. That's it?
Okay. Anything else? Everyone okay with that?
And I should exempt myself from voting since I was the proponent.
If you like, is that necessary? Anyone want to comment? But
I'm not sure, but okay. I'm willing to. Okay.
We've had tag members in the past that were proponents for proposals, and they were allowed to make a move on their own proposal, make a motion.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I think
okay.
I think it's acceptable if as a recommendation at advisory level.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, can we hear a motion then to approve as modified to the BFP committee?
I'll make a motion that we approve this as modified.
Thank you, Roger.
This is Al. I'd second.
Thank you, Al. Any deliberation, further deliberation? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Okay, that we're more than halfway on our time, a lot of time, and that's the halfway point on our proposals. Should I recommend a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 11:53? Any objection?
Sounds good.
Shirley, thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Okay. We have 5 more, so let's we're on 029, Stoyan.
Yes.
All right.
Give me a second. Here it is. The proponent is Sue again.
Did we beat Sue back? Let's give it a minute here. Sue, are you back by chance?
Todd, if you'd like, I'm here to actually do 054, so I could do that one while we wait on Sue for the other two.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Monica. Let's do that. So let's move to 054, please. And we'll come back.
Excellent. I'm sorry if these look like it's a modification to the section. We should have put a space between the 306.6 and 306.7.1. So sorry about that. It's a little confusing. What we're trying to do here is clarify that LULAs, limited use, limited application elevators, are allowed, because they are allowed. There's several ways to get there, but the IEBC already permits platform lifts as a component of the accessible route in an existing building. And this proposal will make clear that LULAs are also allowed in that accessible route in an existing building. If you read the reason statement, it kind of covers why this voluntary upgrade over a platform lift is accessible, but I'll kind of share some of that with this testimony as well. We do often get requested to put in a LULA, and just so you know, a LULA is a type of elevator that has specific provisions in the ADA standard, as well as ASME A17.1 standard. And we believe that this is appropriate to provide language specific to the LULA in the IEBC accessibility provisions for alterations. For instance, if you have an addition that is not required to have an accessible route to it, by satisfying one of the exceptions in IBC 1104.4, providing a LULA as a component of the accessible route is providing greater accessibility and is permitted. That is also consistent with the ADA guide, section 206.6, where it states in facilities not required to have an accessible route between stories or to mezzanines, a limited use, limited application elevator is permitted. There's also an allowance for LULAs as an alternative to platform lifts and private residence elevators. So again, this change is consistent, and this is something that code officials do allow regularly to occur. As for other types of work covered in section 306 of the IEBC, change of occupancy provisions direct you to comply with 306.7 for alterations. So a change of occupancy is permitted to have a platform lift. And with this change, it will be clear that a LULA is also permitted for that change of occupancy. We want to be clear that this proposal does not extend to additions, which are required to comply with the provisions for new construction. This provision is not specific to repairs either. We did locate this in this specific location. That way it just, it's kind of an area that makes sense. It covers, platform lifts, LULAs, other things like that. So it's a good location for where we're proposing it. And this will provide guidance to applicants on when a LULA is permitted and gives code officials a place to point to for something that many of us are already permitting. And it makes this code a little more user-friendly. So that's it. It's just a clarification and of something that a lot of folks are already providing, and provide specifications on where and when it can't be used. So hopefully we'll get your approval. Go ahead. I'll turn it over to John. He has his hand up.
So I got a question. I'm presuming this is supposed to be like our proposal that we sent to National. It seems to me that based on what you just said, what's shown on the screen is not correct. It should not be 306.6. All of that stuff in yellow should be deleted. And this should be a new section 306.7.8 that's titled limited use, limited application elevators. Is that correct? Because you're saying this is showing it in the addition section.
That may be correct, and we may have sent over the wrong version. I'm looking at it on the screen. I'm so glad you're here to catch what I'm screwing up on, John.
Yeah, because the proposed code amendment, number 4 right above that, section 4 says section 306.7.8. So I'm presuming what it's supposed to read is delete everything in yellow And then the stuff in green is section 30678. And then, like I said, titled limited use, limited application elevators, because otherwise I'm really confused by what you said.
Yeah, don't listen to me sometimes. Thank you for catching that. And I should have caught it earlier.
Okay, so should we make those,
yes.
those changes?
Yeah, strike through the stuff in yellow. Thanks, Stoyan. And then add 306.7.8.
Looks like 306.7.8 is already used.
The idea would be then to renumber everything else.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I was going to say, because that list goes on down through 7.16.
Yep. That's why I mentioned about where we were locating it. This really is the best place for it, even if we need to renumber.
Yeah, agreed.
By the way, Sue, we're coming back to 029030. All right, thanks.
Somehow I think we sent over our working version of this.
Oh gosh, and this does refer to an addition, by the way. If that's, again, if you're not intended to apply this to additions, gosh, let me go. I'm trying to refer back to our original. Yeah, it just ends at shall be permitted as a component of an accessible route, period. So 306.7.8. And so
306.7 is alterations, not additions, so it seems appropriate.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we do it this way? The 306.7.8 is platform lifts, and if we can add and limited use, limited application elevators.
Lulas are different.
Well,
right?
I know.
Well, if you. Okay, I suppose you could say and limited. Then after. Okay.
Like that. Can we just make a note after about renumbering the?
Well, I think what Stoyan is saying is to go ahead and include it in the same section with the platform lists. That way he doesn't have to renumber.
It's too many sections for numbering, and keep in mind that we need to show all this in the WAC, which will be, I mean.
Well, wait, we need to verify, because you're saying that the LULAs need to be installed in accordance with ASME A18, where I believe LULAs is ASME A17.
Yeah, so that he's kept it as a separate sentence.
I kept it a separate.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't see the green there. What you're doing?
The first one is for platform lifts, and then the second one is for the LULA elevators.
Okay.
Probably.
Does that justify as two separate subsections, or are we going too deep?
If you do the second subsection, then you're into the renumbering.
No, under 306.7.8.
Oh,
is there a .1, .2, or is that going too far?
For one sentence, probably not worth it.
Got it. Thank you.
But that's my opinion. I mean, I think this will work for enforcement and things.
Well, how I read it is why it was in 306.6, because Micah, sorry, I'm not your speaker, but it was intended to cover additions that will trigger compliance because of the addition is to area with the primary function. So it was intentionally targeting 306.6, how I read it. See, the end of the sentence is existing construction to the addition.
Yeah, it depends if it depends what Micah, what was intended, because Micah's testimony said it had nothing to do with additions.
Right.
But the language here it does look like it is aimed at additions as well.
Micah, John, is the explanation the correct version, or is that also a previous strategy? Or a previous version, which could be a previous strategy.
I'm going to go with what John's saying, and I'm going to try to pull up how we screwed this up because I can't stand when I screw stuff up. So I'm pretty sure what John is indicating is correct, and what's on the screen will be fine with the modification, but I need to go check. So I'm going to request that we table this if that's a possibility, even till later. I was just going to say, do you want to just table it, and then if there's any other amendments to the proposal, including the explanation, that would be helpful. Yeah, I'm going to go pull it up right now, so I'll have it by the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's, if everyone, unless anyone's opposed, we'll table this for now. Richard, please.
Michael, I'll help you look this up. I agree to table it right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll circle back. Let's go back to 029 with Sue, please.
Okay. So these are some, this is an amendment that amends the substantial damage definition of substantial improvement definition. And these are two definitions that are only used for the purposes of determining compliance with the flood provisions of the code. And what we think is that just being able to use 50% of the cost of the value of the building, if you determine the value of the building using the latest building valuation data published by the International Code Council. And if the valuation data is not applicable, the value can be established using an approved market value. And the reason for this is that when you have, it's really difficult. People try to argue, well, wait, why aren't you including the value of the property? And, it's just a real fight with the applicant. If there is some sort of flood damage, establishing that value of the building. So the city of Tacoma has been using this for quite some time, and we use it for not just flood provisions, but for other provisions, for substantial improvements, for alterations as well. So anyway, it seems like it's a fair way to be able to quickly establish a valuation for the building. And, perhaps you may be overvaluing the building a little bit, but there's the exception if the valuation data is not applicable, or you can use an approved market value. So there is an out, but it could be, if there is substantial flood damage to many buildings at the same time, this could be a way to, move forward quickly and establish those building valuations that they really need to make some decisions quickly. So that's the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Would anyone else like to speak up, please?
First of all, I'll say I support this fully. I think it's the best way to go. My question is, having been a floodplain administrator in the state, has this been brought to Department of Ecology for their opinion? And I bring that up simply because they've raised and been very specific on certain language that they want used in the floodplain provisions. And things like the definitions they may have heartburn with. But other than that, I'm 100% supportive of this because it certainly would make application much clearer and more consistent.
So just last year, Ecology, they reviewed our floodplain provisions, including these definitions, and City of Tacoma is a department contact or something like that. So, which included review of all our codes related to floodplains. So there were no problems that they had with it. So.
Okay, thank you. Mark, please.
Yeah, I was kind of asking questions along the same line. We just had some flood events last December, and there were quite a few damaged buildings. And it is really hard to kind of figure out what the value of the property was at the time of the flood. And this would be a really useful tool. When we got visited by FEMA just recently, and some of their they were really drilling down into valuation and how we calculated it. And FEMA does have a long list of items that you're supposed to include in the valuation and things that you can exclude from valuation. So I don't know how we marry that with the FEMA publications that talk about substantial damage and substantial improvement. I would be very curious to see if not only Department of Ecology, but the CRS program and any other stakeholders in this would agree with this. And one other comment is the building valuation data table it has modifiers in it for some places. If you use it straight out like it is that we base our building permit fees on, it doesn't align very well. I'm finding out that if you use I'll give you an example. I have a $58 million project going on, and the valuation data table shows it as 13 million. So sometimes those can really go unaligned with real world events happening now. So I'd be cautious of this until it's vetted out by other stakeholders. And that's my comments.
Thank you, Mark. Any response to that? Any other comments?
I think other stakeholders, you know, are certainly, like I say, City of Tacoma's used this for a long time. And we just found it much easier to establish valuation. But again, we've had ecology review our FEMA codes, and there hasn't been any exceptions to this. I'm a certified floodplain manager myself with the city. So, you know, I just know, yeah, I mean, there are certainly, there could be differences, which is why, again, you know, the exception, if the valuation data is not applicable, you know, it gives an out and you can use an approved market valuation. It's, it's definitely a way to, you know, try to get something quickly for a building, and, you know, instead of being muddled down in a market evaluation and then arguing back and forth that I want to use the land value, why can't I use the value of the land? And, you know, I've done these improvements, and it really has helped us on the city side to move quickly on these flood damages. But I agree, stakeholders, you know, during this process with, you know, the approval from in moving forward, I mean, this is an advisory group. You know, maybe it technically makes sense to us, but yeah, there should be other stakeholders involved in, you know, the final approval of the proposal.
Mark, you still have your hand up, right?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to, I'm struggling with this still a little bit. And I think there's also, within our codes, we have definitions of substantial improvement, substantial damage. And in fact, I just went through the CRS review for the city of Mount Vernon, and they had you can actually get some points by talking about cumulative improvements on substantial improvements, and giving a timeline on that. But this seems like this substantial damage and improvement is defined in a lot of areas. So I would really like to see how that meshes with other definitions of substantial improvement and substantial damage from other organizations, if that's possible. I would hate for it to affect our CRS rating by adopting that.
And just, you know, City of Tacoma is not in the CRS program, so, but we're considering it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, anyone else have any specific recommendations then?
I'm not quite sure. I'm still trying to think about the implications of this, but I like using the valuation data table to establish some kind of valuation rather than having appraisers go in and give me evaluations that way. So I like the idea. I just don't know how it's going to mesh with other agencies. That's my main concern.
Okay, anyone prepared to propose a motion to take action upon this?
Can I propose a motion to forward it to the BFP as submitted?
Yep, I believe that's allowed.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so moved and seconded. Is there any deliberation?
Hi, Sue.
Go ahead.
This is Sean Perlstrom. Has anybody talked to the the National Flood Insurance Program? Because that's really where this language comes from. The 50% rule that FEMA uses.
Again, you know, that it is a flood insurance provision, you know, related to being able to improve their building and, you know, meeting certain percentages. And, you know, this establishes some sort of evaluation. So you make the decision, can they improve the building or do they have to raise the floor? You know, whatever that requirement may be. So, you know, this is just, it's a tool for the building official to use to help them after the flood, to help them make that decision. You know, the NFIP is not the decision maker. The building official is the decision maker, and NFIP is just the insurance provider. And if the building official says, we've determined, you know, through what we feel is a reasonable valuation analysis, that it's below the 50% or above the 50%, we have made that determination, then, you know, then you make the decision on what improvements they can do.
Okay. And again, my concern is just our insurance rates, right?
Sure.
That does not get affected by.
But again, NFIP is not the code. I mean, they have codes, but they are not the code official. You know, as the building official, you are the one that makes that decision. Is it substantial? This is in the building code. So is it substantial damage? You are making your best decision on whether it is substantial damage. And you can decide that 50% of the building valuation damage is a very reasonable way to determine what the value of the building is. Or you can say, I just don't think the building valuation data is applicable, and you're going to need to get someone in there to do a market analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Michael, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say the benefit here is that it gives building officials an objective way to provide valuation, as opposed to essentially, whatever subjective means you want to use to establish market value, because that obviously is very fluid. So, whether or not this as a Washington State amendment can pass the muster of, is it Washington specific, or do we have to have this for some state thing? I don't know if we can make that argument, but as for that's why I'm supportive of sending it along to the committee. Let them make those determinations, but based on the proposal itself being I think of value to our code. So
okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, if there's no other deliberation, it's been moved and seconded to forward this as presented, as submitted to the BFP committee. If we're ready, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, so approved. Thank you, Sue. And we'll move on to the next one, 030 with Sue, please.
Okay. So this is somewhat similar, only City of Tacoma expanded it to just be any level 3 alterations. And so after so a level 2 alteration is below the level threshold of level 3, and and so what we say for level 3 alterations is the work meets or exceeds the threshold of either substantial improvement or substantial damage. So we allow the ICC building valuation data to be used to define what a level 3 alteration is, not just flood provisions. So this is just, again, another technique to be able to quickly establish whether you have a level 3 alteration. And sometimes it's very difficult when you have a building that it's like, well, we're doing some work in this area and some work in that area. I don't know, do we meet 50% of the area or not? So this is just another arena, it's another arena for us to use that building valuation data to apply to level 3 alterations.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at the existing code, so I might ask that maybe when I'm looking at more of this should be highlighted as change, correct? But that's something that we can take care of. Am I seeing this correctly from the existing 2018?
Okay, maybe I used the wrong code.
No, I just think it's simply I just want to be thorough here and make sure we're highlighting the right changes. And if it's not easy to post on, that's okay. Is there any discussion of this while we're kind of pulling up the existing code? Thank you. Sorry. 604 is what we're looking for. Okay, that's what I see.
Huh.
Okay, so that'd be my only request. We just propose we modify the way it's presented so that it,
okay. Yeah, I probably used the wrong code sections.
okay, is there, if there's no discussion, can we entertain a motion?
Oh, I would like to motion for us to move this on to the BFP for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
This is Bill, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, now any further deliberation?
I have a clarifying question. Is it approved as modified or approved as submitted?
Oh, well, I think
my motion should be approved as modified, as Todd suggested.
I see, because I've asked for that. Historian, is that clear what I'm asking?
To align with 2021.
Yeah, just to make sure that the proposed changes actually reflect.
Yeah, the format, something's askew with the.
Michael, you're very soft.
Sorry, yeah, I was just I would agree with approved as modified because there's something amiss in the format there based on the code language. I think the substance is certainly agreeable. We just need to fix the form.
Yeah, thank you. Just fix the strikeouts and the underlying text. No changes to it though. But yes, that's a modification to the proposal. So yes. Okay. Okay, if there's no other deliberation, then if we're ready, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry. Any opposed, nay? Or any abstentions? Okay. So approved, thank you. We completed, do you want to come back to 050, Micah, or do you want to skip over it for?
We're ready. We emailed some stuff to Stoyan real fast, and we're gonna start over. So ignore.
Stoyan, are you ready, or do you want to? You're good.
Yes,
we're good.
So this one goes away, and we are replacing it with that.
I think Micah's saying he emailed more.
Oh,
yeah, we emailed you something else. We don't want to do it that way necessarily. We want to have it in both. So, like I said, let's just start over. ignore my testimony and kind of ignore the reason statement. We really need to revise the reason statement before the BFP committee. Our intent is that limited use, limited applications will be able to be used pretty much anywhere you use a platform lift. So that's, additions and everything else. So we do want to end section 306.6 and section 306.7.8 that says you shall be able to use these, or you can use these. So that's really, let's simplify that. We can show that on the screen if need be. So you just need to take the second half you've got there, Stoyan, and add a 3066 section as well, or an addition, to the additions, because we do want to have it wherever you're allowed to use those. And John's going to help me jump in here too, I think.
Yeah, I think undelete what you deleted in 3066 above there.
Right.
So undelete all of that, and yeah. So we want it in both places for additions and
correct
alterations, and that's what this would do. Yeah.
So what is shown on the screen now would be correct, aside from the 306.7.8. We don't need the entire portion underlined, just the limited use application elevator change to the title, and then the limited use limited application elevator sentence at the bottom. If that makes any sense to you, Stoyan. But what is shown on the screen will be correct once that last modification for underline is changed.
Try again about the last modification. So
no, not that one. Go to the sentence above that. The only part of that sentence that needs to be underlined is limited use, limited application elevator.
Well, it's underlined because this is a modification to the proposal. So I'll take care of that.
Okay.
Washington is unique state, right? And
perfect.
So we need the entire section underlined for WAC, and we need to show it in a different way to show the changes from the model code. So
perfect.
I'll take care of it.
Well, thanks for starting over, everyone. To simplify it again, this is to specify that a Lula can be used pretty much anywhere you can use a platform lift. Hopefully that simplifies it for everyone. Thanks for tabling this and coming back to it. Any questions?
Peter has his
hand.
Yeah, sorry.
I had a comment on this. I mean, I don't see any real problem with using Lulus versus platform lifts. The problem I have with these is that whether or not they are really truly user friendly, they're oftentimes under control of the establishment that's putting them in, and oftentimes they're non-functional or their keys are locked. Are these entities open and available for public use? I mean, or are they controlled by the entity that owns them? And it is a little bit off topic, I'm sorry, but.
No, that's fine. I'll try to answer that for you. I'm not sure if these are more similar to an elevator than the platform lifts. I think the one you may be concerned with is a platform lift that I think has the keys, and I believe this is very similar to an elevator. It's just I think their lifting height is only 25 or 30 feet. So they're different than the platform lift, I think, that you may be kind of talking about here. And before we get too much further, I did want to indicate that we did have a change that needs to go on this. We did eliminate the connecting the existing construction to the addition language. John, was that correct? In the first sentence, yeah. So Stoyan, if you could strike that.
Which one?
Connecting the existing construction in the addition of the 306.7.1. That's not supposed to be there. Starting right there.
Well, do you want to allow it for any addition?
No. We want to strike that language. It's not needed.
I respectfully disagree with that.
Okay, great.
Does that conflict with the first sentence then?
You're changing the intent there. Well, it's up to you, but is it how you want it?
That was how the our original proposal should have gone in. Whether it's I suppose if people want to debate putting it back in, that's fine too.
And then Richard, did you have more to add to answer Peter's question?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I did, Micah. Yeah, I was just going to say that there are Lula requirements for controls and sizing, things like that in the ANSI standard. And typically the limitation on these things is, as you said, the travel height, I think it's 25 feet max, and capacity is you're going to be limited by capacity. And, you know, obviously if you required an ambulance stretcher to be put in this, that probably would not be possible. So.
I guess I'm not terribly concerned about the Lulas as much as I am the others. In fact, Lulas seem like a superior alternative to the other two, to platformless and what I forget what the other one is. But at any rate, I mean, the problem with them is oftentimes is they don't get maintained. They get the keys get lost, and they are basically might as well not have been installed. I think 50% of the entities that I use that fall into this category are not usable. But I would actually prefer to see a Lula used, because it implies a certain degree of protectability that the platformless don't have. I'm in favor of this amendment here, but I just want to point out that the background problem here. So.
Thank you, Peter. John?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we propose this, because yes, we do believe that Lulas are superior to the platformless. Just in kind of about the question about the keys and things like that, unfortunately, that's not something that's enforceable at plan review and CFO. So
I understand that. I'm just doing more education than I am anything else here.
Sure, yeah, we understand that. Yeah, definitely understand that's an issue. Yeah.
Right.
Stoyan, would you mind flashing the 2021 base code one more time? I'm now remembering how this was renumbered. I had to get my grounding. I was curious what
what section?
306. Okay. There it is. Okay. I'd forgotten that this was renumbered, right? From the 18. Doesn't matter. I just wanted to round everyone in.
Yes, I think there is a renumbering. Yes.
Yeah.
30678 is for alteration.
Okay.
And Micah, if you can resend the proposal with a different rationale, because again, you changed the intent of the.
Yeah, we'll get that done.
Okay.
Michael, please.
I do still have a question though on the addition portion. Is the intent to allow all additions to utilize that? Because by striking that last part, I think it opens it up, especially being 306.7.1 is more specific than the general in 306.6. Therefore would override it and allow the limited use elevators in any addition without that clarifying statement.
That was my concern as well.
And based on the reason statement, second paragraph, I believe the intent is to get this into all additions.
Even when an addition can theoretically or should theoretically be fully compliant on its own?
Yeah, I mean, that's again, if Stoyan, if you could scroll down to the reason statement. The second paragraph there. It starts IEBC 306. Yes, if you could show the whole thing, thank you. That's I think the gist of it. If you want to reinstate that other language, I mean, that's certainly something the tag can do.
Rich?
And Mike, I think that's kind of the way the building code reads. If you kind of start looking in the elevator provisions, it's to me, it has never been clear where the allowance of LULA starts and stops. And I think it then by default then goes back to, you know, what the capacity and, you know, what the application warrants. And then we've talked about this too, because there's disagreement on that as well, right? Like clearly we don't want to allow this in place of a full-size elevator. But I struggle with trying to point to the place where it just in black and white terms says that.
Yeah, and I agree, and I could go either way on it. And it sounds like John could also. The reason I pointed out is I don't want to add any ambiguity to the code where, you know, if we're trying to clarify things, then we just need to make it one way or the other.
John?
So yeah, it's just you're triggering memories of testimonies at the ICC. We did get some testimony, you know, when we presented our change at ICC this last spring, that a Lula is an elevator. I mean, we got that from the access board folks too, and so where the so part of they were arguing a little bit against our proposal because they thought it was unnecessary. Since a Lula is an elevator, it would be allowed in new construction, which we were a little surprised at. But again, that's the testimony we received. Now, whether we all are going to read the code the same way and things like that, that's something else. Because Lulas are regulated by A17.1, that was their argument. They said, you know, it's already covered. We don't need to add this to the code. We think it's necessary as a clarification, but their argument was that it's an elevator, so obviously it's allowed.
So John, to that point, back to Iebc 307, does it belong with the elevators, not platform lifts? Because that's also referencing a.
We're pointing it to that. You know.
Can you scroll down, please, to 306,
7. Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Depends if you agree with that statement that it is an elevator. I've personally never looked into that way, but you know that's again, I think people have different views on that.
Does it just justify its own section?
Don't want to make them renumber. You know, you know, if the tag wants to, you can throw it in the elevator section, that part of it, and then we can certainly, you know, take a look at that and comment back when we get to BFP or through the public comment process.
If I can add something, and Stoyan speaking, right? I was an accessibility consultant before I accepted this job here, so I think I know what I'm talking about sometimes. But Lula elevator is Lula elevator is not a standard elevator, and Lula elevator is approved, permitted for some construction, but not for all. And what you have in section 306, what was the
3066.
3066. You're allowing Lula elevators to all accessible routes. And I think, and I need to double check that I think you're creating something that is less restrictive than how it is currently, including the 2010 ADA standards. That's the issue. Again, I can double check that. But the intent in IBC and the 2010 ADA standards was to allow the platform lifts and the Lula elevators to a specific application, not for everything.
So Rich and then Micah, or other way around, however you want it.
Go ahead, Rich.
Stoyan, you know, I think that's part of the reason we set about to make some sort of a change here, because it'd be one thing if the code said, and you know, the IBC or the IEBC said, LULAs are permitted in the following conditions, right? Limited to 2 stories or 3 stories, limited to, this or that, but there are none. And, what makes it more confusing is that there's actually a LULA section in the ANSI standard. So clearly it's there, clearly it's a thing, but, in terms of how it's specifically pointed to in any of the codes I think it's lacking.
The ANSI standards provides the technical requirements. The ANSI standard doesn't have the scoping.
We understand that.
I understand.
Yeah, we're not trying to move away from the ANSI standards, but the point is sometimes people aren't going to the ANSI standards. And the question here is, are you, as the code allows currently, platform lifts are allowed as a component of accessible route, but there's no definition, there's no clarification for applicants or code officials in the IEBC that LULAs are. You have to go somewhere else. And that's what we're trying to provide here. I don't think there's any argument that LULAs should or could be used in the same locations as a platform lift. And the platform lift is already allowed as part of the accessible route, as a component of it. And this is just providing clarification in the code where most folks are going for design and not the ANSI standards. I know that sounds crazy, but this provides that clarification and allowance. And so that's all this code change is doing. I don't think we're going way far outside the scope or intent of what, a LULA or a platform lift is supposed to be used for. Again, 306.7.8 currently states platform lifts shall be permitted as a component of accessible route. I don't think there's anyone that would argue that a LULA is worse than a platform lift, and the platform lift is already allowed to be there. So I want to say that you should approve this just because it does provide that guidance to applicants and code officials without having to go and make some interpretation that's not consistent across the board. That's it.
There is no issue with 306.7.8, but this is for alterations. The issue is with additions, because the platform lifts and the LULA elevators are allowed again for specific conditions. And I'll give you one example. That's a real example. You have an apartment complex and you're adding to it a merchandise. You're adding a store, and the store has 2 levels. Can you use a LULA elevator here? Because based on what you're proposing, you can use the LULA elevator in the store. And that really violates the ADA standards. So if you want to approve it, sure. I have no vote on it, but it needs more research to justify if the current proposal in 306.6 doesn't violate the ADA standards.
So where were you at the national level when all those folks supported it and said this is consistent? I think there's a big difference of opinion. So I just out of here, again, this is one of those that got fully approved with unanimous vote at the national consensus hearings.
For 306.7.8, I get that.
Yeah. Michael? Or sorry, I'm sorry if you weren't finished.
Here is the proposal, 306.7.8. This is the national level, 306.7.8. There is no issue again with 306.7.8 because this is for alterations. The issue is for the additions, 306.6 right here. If you have the same language here, that will work, but you are currently allowing the LULA elevators for all additions, no exceptions.
Michael, you want to jump in? Or?
Well, Stoyan pretty much just said everything. Said what I was going to say. I am 100% in support of this, as it relates to alterations. So anything in 306.7, and everything Stoyan just said is the same thing I'm looking at for additions. By applying the sentence like that, it allows for any new addition. I mean, you could take a 1,000 square foot building And then let's say we're going to add a 5,000 square foot, 3-story addition on it. That addition would only need to have a lula instead of an elevator if you take that approach. It's just the ambiguity by removing the connecting the existing construction to the addition, I think is the one piece that harms this proposal as it applies to additions. But I think it's great, and I'm fully supportive of everything with the alteration aspect.
Micah?
So what I'm hearing is you all would be supportive if we added back in the strikeout portion of connecting the existing construction to the addition.
In my opinion, either that or just removing the amendment to 306.6. Kind of leave 306.6 alone and add it where you have in the 306.7.
Okay.
Micah, our historian, can you put the ICC, the national level, up again? Micah, can you talk us through that a little bit more? So this was proposed as its own standalone section next to in the alterations?
Yeah, and there was debate about the addition part of it. Again, the proposal, this came from Seattle, as you see, and WABO, and we revisited this and decided that at the state level, we would like to try to do the additions as well. So that's where this additional portion has come in. But again, if the tag is not for that, maybe John can add a little bit to this. I get lost in a lot of our proposals sometimes. But again, if you'd like to add that language back, that would, for the addition part of it, that would still provide some clarification where it says you can put them in an addition or you know, use them as part of the accessible route to the addition from the existing. I think that would be still good clarification for code officials on what would be allowed in those instances. So I'm not opposed to putting that language back, but this change to the alterations was approved without issue.
Yeah, and Todd, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, this is purely for alterations, and the premise was that these are better than platform lifts, and platform lifts are allowed. So let's put these in and make sure it's clear for everybody that these can be used, because we have had actually we've heard of that people, like some people in the elevator industry, are saying these are not allowed by ADA, and we want to make sure it's very clear that they are allowed in these circumstances. Now, so that's the reason behind the national proposal, essentially.
And it reads to me like you went 306.7.7 was elevators, referencing ASME A17.1. You slid this in right after it because that's nice logic, and then knocked down platform to 0.9, which references a different ASME, which makes sense to me also, just clean. I know you have to renumber, but.
Yep. No, I mean that, and we figure the national folks can do that more easily than the state folks, you know. Which is why I'm okay with you know what Stoyan was saying is let's stuff it into, you know, into the existing 306.7.8, and you know it gets us to the same point. And then when the 2024 comes in, assuming that we, you know, that it all goes through, it'll renumber everything afterwards, and we can eliminate the state amendment. As far as the additions goes, you know, if this tag is okay with the proposal adding back the last part of that sentence, you know, the connecting language, I think that would be preferable to rather than eliminating it completely. Again, because it will give some flexibility and guidance to the code official folks. So you know, again, if the tag is willing to put it forward with the last part of that sentence reinstated, then I would think you know that's again better than nothing.
Agreed.
Micah is using the formal Robert's Rule of Order thumbs up.
I'm supportive of that as well.
Michael, okay. Anyone else? Or was anyone opposed to that on the tag? Okay. Well, are we there? Are we ready for a motion on this?
Sure, I would make a motion that we approved it as modified.
Thank you, Roger.
And as because I've been so vocal, I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve as modified. Any deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Or any abstentions? Okay, so approved. Thank you. Okay, we have two left. We're at time, essentially. Any concern about doing these two next week? So date and time certain, that'd be June 8th, 10 o'clock. We do these first and then we move back into the two tabled IBC. Is that what we think the plan is, Stoyan?
Well, we have two options, keep these two for the next meeting or expand this meeting a little bit. If we can get something done for 15 minutes, it's up to the TAC members to consider.
I'm open to that. How's everyone's schedule since we advertised 1 o'clock?
I've got 15 more minutes. It's fine with me.
This Al, I have to jump to another meeting.
Okay.
I've got 10 to 15 minutes. This is Bill.
Okay.
Same as Andrea.
Okay, Al, how do you feel about that? I think I would lean more towards just moving into the next meeting if we're going to lose anyone.
Oh, I'm okay with the tag going forward.
Micah?
I'm not on the tag, but my name is somewhat involved with these. We can move them to the next meeting if that's preference and not keep anybody over.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to take a significant portion of time in the next meeting. I know you've got a lot of other stuff to cover in the next meeting.
Yeah, the only argument for it is.
Yeah, for the next meeting, we'll have only two proposals. They are kind of complicated, but only two. So we can start with the last two from the existing building code, and then we can continue with.
Okay. Do we anticipate on these two from the proponents that these are contentious at all? And I only ask that just monitoring time.
There might be a little bit discussion on the second one, the voluntary lateral. The engineers may want to have something to say about that.
Well, we got a couple minutes here. Just can we set these up, tee these up a little bit, and just we'll spend a couple minutes here, and then maybe we will continue, take action next week. But go ahead, I see you, Julius.
Yeah, this is Julius. I'm filling in for Natalie, who wrote this proposal for our committee, technical code development. And this proposal basically adds an exception to the two voluntary seismic upgrade provision of the IEBC, and under the prescriptive section, that 503.13 and the work area method section in 805.4. So the purpose of this proposal is to give a code path to add flexibility of the types of lateral force resisting system that can be used on an existing building for voluntary seismic alteration. So currently what the code language shows in item number 2, it indicates that when you're adding new structural elements to an existing building, it shall comply with the IBC, which implies it needs to comply with the current ASCE 7 standard, and ASCE 7 has some limitation for the type of system that you could use depending on the seismicity of the site. And like for our state, generally in Washington state, we are under seismic category D, which generally the required system, lateral force resisting system you could use in our area is usually special seismic force resisting system. So what this proposal does is it allows you to use ordinary or intermediate systems that might be more compatible with the rigidity and ductility of the existing building. For example, if it's a URM existing building, it's more compatible to use an ordinary brace frame system instead of a special brace frame system. So that's what the intent of this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Julius. You know, others, Roger in particular, you know, I think we want to take some time on this, right? This is a one we want to maybe make sure we don't rush. I put you in the spot, Roger, but you're on mute.
I think I'm in general support of it, but I do think it takes a little bit of time. I know my question would be, does it have to say something about all of the requirements of an ordinary or intermediate? I mean, not just selecting it. I think that there are some other, you know, when you do an ordinary, is the welding different? And I don't remember all of the details, but is this enough to really, does this give you enough direction to really allow you to use the system? You know, if you're voluntarily upgrading a system, adding a ordinary intermediate frame is definitely improving the building. So, but just are there other, from a code perspective, are there other, just saying that you can use it, is that enough? Okay. So I would need to take a little bit of time to look through it.
Okay, I agree. So if everyone's okay with it, let's table this one and go ahead, Julius and John, please. Julius first.
Yeah, I'm okay tabling it. I just want to add a note that we submitted the same proposal on the national level, and it was approved by the committee 10-2, although we are working on some tweaking on the language because there are some changes on this section by other group, ASCE, on 2024 IEBC, which won't affect this for 2021, but on 2024, there are some changes for this section that we're trying to tweak this proposal, but the intent is the same, to be able to use ordinary or intermediate system if you're doing a voluntary seismic upgrade, because the intent is just to improve the existing lateral force resisting system of the building.
Okay.
And just responding to Roger's question a little bit, I believe that it would be arguable, you know, if you don't comply with everything that with an ordinary or intermediate, that it'd be pretty hard to argue that you're complying with that. First of all, you know, to call it ordinary and not do everything that's associated with ordinary, I think would be kind of odd and difficult to justify. I think my concern would be if you said all the requirements and tried to say all the requirements for ordinary and intermediate, that some people will start looking back. Oh, but wait a minute, you're not allowed to use this in, you know, these seismic design categories, so you can't do it. And I think that'll create some confusion. So, but certainly, yeah, you know, take a look at that and you know, see and let us know what you think.
Okay. Thank you, John. Yeah, I like tabling this one, and then we'll start right away with these two proposals. And let's just spend a couple minutes just previewing the other one, or if it's if we have the proponent here, do you want to talk a little bit about this one? And this, by other one, I mean 055.
Hi, this is Jennifer Gilliland. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, welcome, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is we're just trying to accomplish a couple of things to bring some clarity to the repair section of the existing buildings code in Chapter 4. We're making some changes in the scoping language. We're trying to accomplish two things. One is just to make it clear that if you're doing work on damaged components and you need to do some work on non-damaged components that's necessary to repair what's already been damaged, that's not going to trigger the requirements for alterations, which can be, pretty extreme to try to bring something up to code. And then the second thing we're trying to do in 401.4 is just trying to give building officials something that will allow them to say, okay, this building has been effectively demolished by damage, or where the owner decides to demo and replace a building, that they have to meet the requirements for new construction. So my guess is that we may have some discussion about, whether everything needs to come up to new construction standards. And then also there might be some discussion about what effectively demolished means. And, I will say that there was a very similar proposal at the national level this time for the 2024 codes. And there was some feedback on that. They generally liked the idea, but there were some concerns. The way that one was written, instead of having it requiring things be brought up to new construction, they were requiring things to be brought up to the requirements of additions. And there were some comments related to that. So that's basically kind of what we're trying to do, is just things that I think kind of come up for building officials pretty regularly when you've got a lot of damage to a building, and trying to deal with that, where you've got somebody who's trying to, say, well, I still have this wall, so or part of this wall, and I want to, not come up to full code. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just, taking a couple minutes here. Anyone have any comments or concerns or desire to table, or? Go ahead, Roger. Oh.
I have one add or edit. Work on the first underlined part, work on non-damaged components that are necessary, not that is. Unless I'm not great at English or grammar, but I believe that that's correct.
Roger, it's work is, not work are. So I think we're good the way it is.
The work is referenced. Okay.
Yeah, I think the is correct there, but there is a lot getting in the middle of it that,
I guess maybe we'll ask, are there any concerns on this one where we couldn't move this forward today?
Oops.
Bill? Oh, I see. Okay. Chris.
Clapping looks an awful lot like hand raising, sorry.
I was hoping you were just saying, fantastic.
My only concern is just, it's still loose. Mm-hmm. I get the demolition and replacement thing. It still doesn't really help us get to a decision. I think that's a decision we still have to make as building officials and code officials. Like, when is it not repair and when is it replacement? So I like the idea of having something there, but I think it should have more boundaries, like when you do this, then kind of thing. And maybe that would give us all a more consistent approach, or maybe people like the fact that they can make it up and go with what they want. I don't know what the answer is there, but I like the idea of putting something in there, but I don't know that we're all the way there yet with what's on the screen, which is what I think you said, right? So.
Okay.
Okay. Is any, well, I comment, I support this 401.4 edition. That's in my practice, I just assume this is how we would approach this. So if this is required language to make that very clear, I would support it. Is that the intent? Are there cases where you're seeing projects proposed that the comment on the additions kind of surprised me at the national level? that wouldn't even occur to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, having worked previously in another jurisdiction, I mean, it was an argument that you would sometimes get into with folks, they didn't feel like it was, fully demolished, and, we're looking for any little thing. And in terms of trying to bring additional clarity to kind of what the effectively demolished means, at the national level, they did have some discussion about that, because there are, some jurisdictions use, 50% of replacement cost as the trigger. At the national hearings, they felt like it was kind of a burden for the building official to have to, deal with changing real estate costs. And kind of our previous discussion, I think we had with Sue on using the building valuation tables. They also, some mentioned maybe having a complete damage definition, but, and maybe having some percentages. And then there was some concern about, they were saying, basically, you could say, okay, damage takes you down to the foundation. But in that case, where does it stop? Are you really going to say you have to meet full code because you've got a sill plate on that foundation? So yeah, I mean, the way that it's written right now, I mean, it's definitely building official discretion. If they can justify what effectively demolished means. But, I think it's up to you folks as building officials and others, is that an appropriate place for some discretion? Or do you want it more tightly written?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, personally, as a former building official, I like the flexibility to be able to interpret that. And to answer Todd, I think your question is that yes, we not regularly, but occasionally got into arguments because the land use code treated things a little bit differently, and essentially said if you leave two walls up, now it's still an existing building, right?
No.
And so now you're into the code, and the problem, some of the difficulties that certainly from like a seismic standpoint, the existing buildings code allows you some reduced seismic loads, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're rebuilding, 90% of the house. Same thing happens with floods. You sweep the building off the foundation or your slab on grade, and that's all you have left. There have been people who tried to argue that well, I'm building back an existing building. It's a repair. I'm replacing what was there, so I should be able to do replace in kind, which again doesn't seem to. It's not what's intended, obviously. So I think what we're trying to do is give some guidance and something to hang the building official's hat on. That we can say, look, the code does say this, and then it becomes a negotiation process. To Chris's point, yes, some of it's going to be negotiated, and hopefully the building official is going to be somewhat consistent in how they apply it. But there are circumstances when, you don't want to do everything, right? So there, you want to be able to give them some flexibility.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, John. Well, okay, we're now definitely coming up on time. Are we comfortable with this? Does someone want to make a motion?
This is Chris. I'm comfortable with it. I'll move to forward it to the BFP as submitted.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second it.
I think that was that Michael?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other deliberation on this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay. Great work, everyone. Thank you. Only came up one short, so I thank you, Jennifer. Okay, with that, we will adjourn, and then I'll leave with a note that when we return in 1 week, so June 8th, Wednesday, June 8th at 10 a.m., we will first start with the remaining IEBC proposal that we discussed, 056, and then we will move into the 2 table IBC proposals. And Stoyan, is that, those are 3 left, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, everyone.